today's intentional conversation, you'll meet Nathan Maines. He's the CEO of the Pennsylvania School Board Association. Nathan, every day, spends his time delicately balancing the energy into legislation for the school board, for its members, and for its community it serves. All right, I'm with Nathan Maines, CEO of the Pennsylvania School Board Association.
Good to see you.
Complex from what I understand. You guys deal with like 1 or 2 or 30 things at once.
Well, education's a hot topic,
Yeah.
right? So we like to be there to support all the school directors and school districts across the state. And since it's such a hot topic right now, I think we get involved in an awful lot of those educational issues, mostly at the state, a little bit at the federal level as well.
Yeah. How do you deal with, I mean, there are so many issues, right? We're not going to dive into all of them, but
Thank
just
goodness.
in a global kind of sense. I mean, you've got schools, regions, geographies, like how do you decipher from what you guys do, how do you decipher where and how to allocate time, energy, resources, bandwidth, mental capacity? Should I go on?
Oh, I think the short answer is we're constantly changing, right? I think that's key. We can be headed down a path on an issue or in a particular focus area, and if something's going to overtake that and rise to the top, I mean, we're all seeing in this day and age how quickly issues can change and relevance of things can change. We work really hard to be flexible, and sometimes I think we're more flexible than others, but generally, the organization is built around being able to kind of retool and redeploy, depending on the moment. There's a lot of support that goes out to the districts. It's not just legislative here in Harrisburg, so we try and stay focused there. There's an awful lot of things changing legally at any given moment. So we've got a crack team of folks in our legal services department that are monitoring that and sharing as quickly as they can. And then, here in Harrisburg, we try to watch and understand what the issues are, but then of course, some of those issues are more apt to be ready to move, others maybe not so much. And we've got a great team that knows how to kind of focus on the things that are most likely to happen and try and engage, if it's to support it or to unfortunately try and keep it from happening.
Yeah.
But it's all about flexibility, I think.
Yeah. So with all that said, what do you do? Like you?
What do I do?
Yeah.
Try and make sense of chaos.
Okay.
I'm involved in a little bit of everything. I'm lucky. I'm living the dream. I get to spend some time in Harrisburg. I get to spend some time out meeting with members. I get to engage on different issues. I get to be involved with our team that focuses on whatever the next iteration of programs and services is going to be. It's a wonderful opportunity to tinker a little bit in an awful lot of places. And, my job, I think, at the end of the day, along with reporting to a board, who ultimately is responsible for the organization, is to try and make sure we keep all those plates spinning.
Yeah. How many people on the board?
Our board is 11, so it's a moderately sized board. We've got other governance structures, but ultimately our governing board is responsible for the organization. Interesting.
So what values guide your decisions, personally, professionally? Like, what are the key things that you have to find yourself constantly being? I know for me, it's I've got to stay on truth. If truth isn't in the room, I have a hard time with it. I've got to rely on some humility to know that other people have answers. What are some of the values that you have that guide you?
I think, as it comes to kind of working at the association, we're guided by what's in the best interests of our members. And trust me, these are outspoken people. We know what they think are in their best interests. They make it abundantly clear to us. We're lucky that way.
You don't have to solicit their opinion, right?
Rarely do I have to go and plead with them to share with me their thoughts. These are, 4,500 elected school directors. These are elected public officials. They're out there trying to do right by their local community, trying to do right by their local school district.
Is that how many members you have in the association?
We actually have more, but when you think about kind of the core, you've got 500 school districts, you've got 9 elected members of each school board, so 4,500 elected school directors. Superintendents we consider part of the membership, school solicitors are a branch, school board secretaries. You get up into more 6,000 plus, about 638 entities at the moment. But when we think about, trying to identify what the right thing is to do, what are they telling us? What are we doing, and will it be in the best interest of the members, the entities, and will it be right for the organization? We want to make sure that we're doing the honorable thing. We want to be as transparent as possible, as honest as possible. But in a membership association like this, we really measure it on, is this going to advance the cause that our members trust us with every single day?
And you can't make everybody happy all the time.
I don't know if you can make everybody happy any of the time.
Okay.
It's a balancing act, and I think that we're not unlike other organizations that represent elected officials. It's a very polarized environment right now. You've got people that are elected that are as liberal can be, and you've got some of the most conservative people you'll ever want to meet. I think what we want to see, or what we believe, is all of those folks are coming to the table with different approaches and different ideas, but they really want public education to work. And so, great, let's start there. We have the need for public education to work, different approaches. If we can kind of generally slice down the middle, that's a safe space for us to be in. It's the right spot for us to be in. We're not a partisan organization. Now, depending on the day, you'll hear somebody claiming we are. I view that as a badge of honor at times. It means we're doing our job because they're confused as to what we really are. But we're nonpartisan. Our job is to represent all people all the time, and to try and find that common ground between all of this kind of myriad of different opinions and views and solutions.
So what are the maybe practical, tangible things you can share with us around conflict resolution? Because I would imagine you run into a significant amount of conflict.
Oh, I think we run into some. I think school boards run into a lot, right? I mean, I think ever since COVID, the interest in what a school board does at the local level has been amazing. And I know that it's given a lot of our school directors challenges. You have an audience. It used to be that you go to a school board meeting, and if you sat in the audience, you were one of like 3 people.
Yeah.
Now people are showing up and you're one of 100 people, 200 people. They were filling auditoriums during the pandemic. I think that that's a challenge, but frankly, I also think that that's maybe one of the silver linings coming out of the pandemic, was it really changed, hopefully forever, the level of interest in what's going on at your local school district and your local school board. So I think it's a positive, but to your point, a lot of disagreements now. More people in the room, there's going to be more opinions. I think some of that trickles up to us, obviously, with a very diverse membership. Generally, our approach is one of hearing out everybody involved, trying to weigh that against what I call the core documents of the organization. We've obviously got the usual documents, but we have a platform that our members vote on every single year that outlines the position of the organization across a myriad of issues. A lot of it guided in legislation or attempts at legislation, but some of it broader. And so, if we always revert back to, look, our members have spoken as a group and said, this is where we want to be, the closer we can get to that, the easier it is to resolve some of those conflicts. And when people disagree, my comment's always the same: get more involved. Join one of our committees, run for a board seat, come out to our delegate assembly. If you feel that we are not aligned with where the broad base of membership is, it's incumbent upon our members to get engaged and tell us, no, wait, we want to go in a little bit different direction. We're not at the right spot. Yeah. All we can do is follow their direction.
So what are the top 3 values, benefits of being a member?
We do a lot of things. I'll tell you that one of the key areas is policy development. So you can imagine that between the state and the federal levels, the rules governing how school districts can and should operate change constantly. It is tough to monitor all those things and then to share with boards draft policies that they can and should implement to be compliant. And it can cover a gamut of things. One day it's a piece of legislation that included some nuance around a health issue. Maybe it's a school nurse issue, something like that. The next day it could be on curriculum. So districts are constantly challenged to have an up-to-date book of policy that drives all of the decision-making in the district. It is very difficult to monitor all the different ways that you have to be compliant. So we have a large team that does just that. They monitor everything. They're constantly drafting and updating policies and sharing those out. Districts then, the vast majority of school districts actually take advantage of that service, utilize those as their base, and then they're going to customize them based on their community needs or a particular district need. But that's a huge service that virtually every district takes advantage of. We provide ongoing legal support to districts through a team of lawyers that we have on staff. We obviously represent the association in Harrisburg through our advocacy arm. We have an extensive public school safety center that we opened a couple of years ago that has moved 1,500 people through so far from a myriad of districts, and that's ongoing training and support. We've got educational outreach courses all over the state for school directors and superintendents.
Right.
The list goes on.
So you mentioned advocacy. I have an interest in advocacy.
Okay.
And it's actually a new area for me in talking to legislators on the Hill. And I find that some of them are very approachable, and some of them are not so approachable. And how do you break through if, a lot of what you've talked about is compliance and helping boards and schools and districts be compliant with what they're doing? How does the association push back up into legislation to affect change?
Well, I think, to what you found, we find the same thing, but I think that that's an ever-shifting kind of approach.
Yeah.
The legislator that's disagreeing with you vehemently right now and doesn't want to talk to you very well could be your biggest champion on the next issue, right? I go back to the old saying of where you stand on an issue often depends on where you sit. And so we try and be very careful not to permanently burn any bridges if we can avoid it, recognize that for whatever reason, each issue that comes forward is going to have a different makeup of folks that are on board, legislators that are actually pushing issues. Half of it we try and push. The other half we're reacting to ideas that legislators have or the governor's office has, that sort of thing. I think our approach is one of trying to keep the lines of communication open and trying to build a mutual respect, recognizing we may not agree on this, but we don't have to be disagreeable while we disagree.
Yeah.
Easier said than done sometimes, though.
Yeah. I would say so. What? So you've been in this seat since, is it 2013?
Right. Yeah. 12 years.
12 years. So some of your biggest learnings, like 2 or 3 things that you've learned that has had the biggest impact on how you manage and how you lead the organization.
On a personal level, taking a beat. That's been something I've learned, but I'll tell you something that I at least have to remind myself of constantly. For me, at least, it's been always easy to quickly move towards, okay, what can we do about this, or how can we respond to it, or, the fire's burning, how do we put it out quickly? I've worked really hard personally. One day I think I'll master it, maybe in about 40 years, to take that beat.
Yeah.
Responding to an email, responding to the phone call, staff member standing there saying, the house is on fire, we got to put it out. That drives some people crazy. It drives me crazy. But I think that's been the biggest thing, is just take that one beat, think about how the reaction's going to be perceived. Is it worth getting a little bit more information before a reaction? So I think that's one. I think another is getting more and more comfortable over the last decade or so with asking more questions and then sitting back and seeing how it all unfolds. And I'm lucky. I've had enough time. I think I was able to come in early in the last dozen years and be kind of in the driver's seat. And I had an idea and a vision, and we wanted to go here, and we had a great team that started to attack. Now it's a matter of how do we get that next generation we've brought in, let them get in the driver's seat. My job is to help them get there, and prompt them and try and guide a little bit, but hang back just a hair. So that's I'm still learning.
Still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I'll let you know how it works if I figure it out.
Yeah. So to that point, how do you disconnect? How do you break away from what you do every day into your personal life? And
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Yeah.
I really don't. I've gotten comfortable with that, though.
Okay. Tell me about that.
I think everybody goes about it differently, and I've found over the years, at least for me, and everybody's wired differently, if you make that intentional effort to really break away, at least for me, it would drive me a little crazy. You're being so intentional about it that you're actually thinking more about it. and I've gotten to a point where I'm really, I think, comfortable and happy with the integration of it all. I like to think about what I do. Some of the most interesting ideas that I've had, or if you have an epiphany about a problem that's been haunting you at work, have come being out doing something different. So I don't know that I want to. I admire and respect people that are able to flip it off and go do whatever. But I love kind of that integration. I'm thinking about work when I'm at home. I'm thinking about home when I'm at work a little bit too. And I'm lucky. My family is supportive of that. Recognizes that these kinds of jobs. I was warned when I took the job by a mentor of mine that this isn't a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday gig.
Punch the clock.
Yeah, I mean that was literally one of the first things they said to me when I said I'm going to take this job. And I said, that's great. It's a great opportunity, but recognize you're moving to a position that this doesn't end at 5 o'clock on Fridays.
Yeah. And
I said, okay, wow. And I didn't necessarily know what they meant at the time, but you can't help it. You're connected in at all times. Something comes up evenings, weekends. We've got a membership that mostly meets on evenings. So things can happen 8 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, right? And I don't necessarily want to ignore the phone call or the text message from a key staff person saying, hey, you'll never believe what happened, X, Y, Z. I want to be involved. I want to know, and I want to start thinking about it. And it's great. I love it.
Yeah, so you love what you do.
Yeah,
you love the work that you do. You love the impact that you're having. I think that's important for all of us to actually love what we do. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Well, right? I've heard people say, and I didn't understand it, I thought for a long time, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's right.
How great is that?
Yeah, it is.
To get up in the morning, I think I've met more and more people that I think feel the same way. Like, it's work, I get it, but it's kind of fun too. Yeah.
What are like the one or two things you love the most about what you do? Is it the people? Is it the affecting change? Is it policy? What do you dive into the most? What do you gravitate towards?
What do I gravitate? I love that we can innovate. I love that there is something new that if we want to go there, we have the opportunity. We've got the leadership in our boards and that sort of thing that encourage us. This isn't, we've always done it this way. Just stay in your lane and let's keep executing. It's been a very open organization to let's blow something up and try it a different way. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, we'll try it again. I love that creative freedom that comes with it. And I love the people. We have some interesting members, and they can be a little difficult at times, but you know what? They're passionate about what they do, and I can respect that. And we might disagree today, and we might be on the same page tomorrow. And even more than that, we have the most incredible team, and they're passionate about their work. And how can you not get excited about going into work every day with a group of people that are also pretty darn motivated to be there and excited about it?
Yeah, it's always good when you got good people.
Yeah, I mean, it makes life easy.
Or it's better anyway.
Yeah. I probably right now have the best senior leadership team I've ever had the opportunity to work with. I can't imagine not working with this team.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome. I get to come in and these are brilliant people that want to share their ideas and make their own impact. And I get to be a part of that. That's pretty cool.
That's good. So your younger self, what would your younger self say to you today, watching you today?
What would they say? See, I told you you should have stayed a little bit calmer and taken your time, but it would all work out at the end.
Any tips you would key to other than the beat? I think the beat's an important thing because we all at probably some point in our career experience. I know I have. The more you can sort of pause, because you don't always have to address the thing that's in front of you that needs to be addressed. Sometimes it's better to take a pause and maybe figure it out a little bit, right, and then address it.
Where were you 10 years ago? I could have used that advice.
Yeah.
That would have been. No, it's true, right? And how often, I've come to realize, you probably have too, if you take that beat, how often does that issue, whatever seemed like the major crisis of the moment, it's resolved itself?
Yeah.
I mean, it almost seems kind of stupid in a way. Like, oh my God, I was about to engage and fix that. It fixed itself.
Yeah.
By the time I got to it, done. It resolved.
Yeah.
And that's so much easier. Not to sound lazy about it, but man, a problem that resolves itself is always easier than me trying to resolve a problem.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes the people around you can just get it done.
Yeah.
If you just allow them the time and the space and the empowerment to do that.
And that's what really creates, I think, that feeds into what we were talking about with a really smart team that's motivated.
Yeah.
It's having that faith that if you turn them loose, and don't worry about solving every problem for them, they're going to get there.
Yeah.
And they're going to be better for it, and they're going to solve the next 4 things that come along faster than you ever could.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's mellowing with age or
Yeah.
what it is, but
Well, we're
it's taken
approaching
me
middle
forever.
age, so, we're not quite there yet, right?
Depending on the day, I feel like I might have passed right by now. Yeah, it's with age, I guess, comes experience, and
Yeah.
man, I'm all for having as much experience as I can back myself up with, because
Yeah.
the problems are more complex now than I remember them being 10 years ago. So
Yeah. So you and I have had to lead our organizations through a kind of a robust time into what was a very challenging time in 2020 with the
Yeah.
pandemic.
yeah.
And here we are 5 or so, coming up on 5 years later. What were there I experienced many overwhelming moments in that period, particularly 2020, 2021,
Yeah.
even 2022, some overwhelming moments because nothing was the same, right? We had to change parts of our business. We had to change part of our model. We had to look at how we were leading organizations. Any overwhelming moments in that period for you, and what did you do with it?
I think the whole thing was overwhelming at the beginning, right? It's funny. I did an interview with a newspaper, a couple of weeks ago, and it was a look back at 2020, and it was focused on all the things in education that, like one day schools were open, life was normal, and the next day everything was shut down, and we all went, "Oh my God, what comes next?" So it got me thinking about it. And those opening weeks, at least from where I was sitting at the time, were so busy and yet so quiet at the same time. It was bizarre, because we obviously, you probably did too, shut down facilities,
Yep.
sent everybody home. I spent the rest of 2020 coming in every day, but only because it was only me and our facilities guy, and we stayed far apart. And I never saw him some days.
Right.
But it really changed how we worked. I think every day was just a big question mark as to, oh my God, what comes next? There was so much unknown in the early days about even what COVID was, right?
Right.
Are our employees safe? And so I think there was a lot of those kind of really fearful moments, but we had a clear idea of what we needed to do in that time broadly. And if we could just execute on those things, I kind of hoped in the back of my mind it would all work out at the end. We wanted to keep all of our folks employed. There was just, everybody was going through such personal turmoil,
Yeah.
worried about family and
Right.
life and everything. The last thing you wanted was people really panicking about, will their jobs be there tomorrow? And so we probably just kind of rolled the dice a little bit, because we didn't know, but told our folks up front, look, we were going to keep everybody on. We were going to figure it out. And we did. After all that, by the time we brought everybody back, we had not ever furloughed, laid anybody off, done any of that the whole duration of the pandemic. And we kept people busy too,
Yeah.
which was good. The next commitment was, how could we help our members, which were the school districts, try and navigate that every day there was some giant new question nobody knew the answer to? Because everybody was feeling it out at the same time. Would the governor shut more down? Would the governor reopen at the time? We just didn't know. And so how could we move into a position of being as well informed as we could be, and to very rapidly share that out? And we did a lot of adaptation of technology. Like everybody else, we became hyper proficient with Zoom overnight.
Yeah.
And taught others. So it was all that kind of fear, unknown, but we kind of stayed true to, we're gonna do everything we can for our members. We're going to do everything we can for our employees, and this too shall pass. And it did finally.
Most things do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find that your leadership team developed in a unpredictable way, like in terms of carrying the burden of that time period? A lot of responsibility, a lot of heavy weight, right? So how did your leadership team function or come together in a different way prior to that experience?
It was as much that there was a real bonding experience in the opening weeks of that. I think we had a schedule, a rhythm prior to the pandemic of once a week, getting in a room together for an hour. And that worked for us, and we were all together in a building, and everything that, COVID changed, which was a team spread out all over the place. It was fascinating very quickly how that team of I think it was about 7 people, moved quickly into meeting every morning first thing, and there was plenty to talk about.
Yeah.
And it was a combination of kind of surfacing all of the questions and surfacing anybody that had answers. And then I think it was a little bit of just therapy session for those people too. You know, you're trying to make sense of everything in the world.
Yeah.
And then we generally get together later in the day as well, at least either a small subset or the whole group, to again just kind of check in on, okay, what the last 4 or 5 hours bring. I think the team really grew closer at the time. Most of the team is still now together. And it really, you know, it forges deeper relationships when you're thrust into that.
Yeah.
It was, I wouldn't say it was a good time. I wouldn't want to do it again, but I think it was a really interesting experience to have.
Yeah. Did your leadership style shift at all?
Yeah, I think we all had to a little bit. You know,
Yeah.
I was used to very much in the room, communicate or stroll around. I still love that. I'd much prefer to walk down the hall and talk to somebody than schedule or try and Teams them or whatever. But it had to, right? We had to operate much more in a remote environment. We had to operate more asynchronously. We wanted to be respectful because, you know, no longer was work kind of 8 to 4:30 or whatever it was. People had their kids at home and you know, we're helping family members and all that. So people were working at odd hours and trying to do what they needed to do. So it was tough to adapt, I thought at first, to operating much more asynchronously from other staff. But like anything, you learn, I think. I tried.
And so today, how's it going?
I think it's going really well. I think we've come back from that. I don't know if you guys have come back from that fully remote.
We're almost there.
Yeah, we're I think we probably took longer than we could have to bring people back, but I will tell you that it's been interesting to see that it's sort of evolved on its own. It really hasn't been tough to get people back into the offices. The vast majority of them, you know, started to trickle back in, and then they went, well, I'm here 2 days a week, but you know, I get more done when I'm here 3 days a week, and it evolved over time. We're fully back. We've had some changes in some of our positions, but that was going to be natural as I think people reevaluated during the pandemic what they wanted to do with their lives, and you know, we wish some people well, and we also picked up some great additions to the team. So it's ever evolving.
Yeah, that's great. Well, the work you guys are doing is important, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to
good to see you.
Come and chat with us. Thank you for joining us today for Intentional Conversations. Our hope is that this will inspire you at some level. Something you've heard today that will be a takeaway for you. Maybe you'll share it with a friend or a family member or someone in business. Intentional conversations are exactly that. They're made to be intentional. I hope you have some.